Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Hail to Michigan podcast. I'm your host, Ronnie Harder, and I'm joined today by Contown as Matt is out tonight. Contown, how are you?
Doing good, man. Looking forward to Big Ten play here. Had a great weekend of football last weekend, starting to see some things come into focus. Some teams that were highly rated the last couple of weeks have taken a bit of a dip here. So some things in the national picture starting to get clearer. And as we start conference play here, I'm looking forward to seeing more.
You think Penn State's legit?
I think they're like firmly the third team in the East, and I don't really know what that means yet.
Yeah,
They
I was
look,
gonna say Big Ten overall, but I guess you could say
yeah.
the East. Just depends on what you think of Minnesota, of course.
I think they could lose to Minnesota at home, Penn State. That is,
Yeah,
like they seem to be pretty. They seem like they've tightened some things up from last year.
yeah, absolutely,
But
especially in the run game.
especially in the run game. But I also think the teams they've played have looked like Purdue is like really
Well, they
undisciplined.
actually they rushed really bad against Purdue. I think they
They
only
run,
averaged like
yeah,
3.1 yards per carry or something.
they did. Yeah,
So
they weren't great on the ground against Purdue, and that's Purdue
yeah,
team that's without Karloftis now.
yeah. And honestly, Purdue hasn't been that impressive
No, I mean
to
I
start
think
the year.
Syracuse
I
is
thought they were going
okay,
to be
but
much better. Yeah,
yeah, they go to lose. They go and lose to Syracuse. The
yeah.
Auburn game, Auburn looked
Auburn's just
so
awful.
poorly
Yeah,
coached.
that's a team that's just they're like they're like Washington last year. Not like
Yeah,
I think they're worse than Washington last year, but I mean it's the similarities are there in terms of
yeah,
just
that's not a bad comparison.
yeah.
They're about same like top 20 talent team, but like
Yeah.
just they know the coach is not
Oh, he's
going to
done
be here
for.
long. Yeah, so
Yeah.
and the
Well,
quarterback situation is pitiful.
yeah, it's really bad at Auburn. I mean, if TJ Finley's your number one, I can't imagine what Calzada looks like, and he's
I
your
and
number three.
I just saw today that Calzada's out, so it's
Oh no,
uh
really? Okay,
yeah.
that's not a
um
surprise. I mean, like kind of figured that would happen, but whatever.
yeah
This is not a Big Ten podcast. Obviously, this is a Michigan podcast, and we're going to talk about the 59-0 win against UConn this past Saturday. Michigan put up 465 total yards on offense, held UConn to only 110 yards. UConn looked so undisciplined on offense, and they just kept fumbling the ball, fumbling the snaps. I think Zion Turner only completed like 20% of his passes. The run game couldn't get going from UConn. And then on the other side of the ball, Michigan, that JJ McCarthy did it again. I think I saw something on PFF a couple days ago where he has yet to have like a turnover worthy play, which is insane to me. Because a lot of people have been like, oh, he hasn't really played anybody, and that's true. He really hasn't played anybody good, but man, not having at least one turnover worthy play, doesn't matter who you're playing. That's freaking impressive. I mean, there's other quarterbacks that are just as good, if not better, that have at least one or two against competition similar to Hawaii. So, JJ looked good. The running game, we'll save that for a little bit later. There's definitely some thoughts on the running game, especially on the rewatch. But Ronnie Bell was our leading receiver, and then over on defense, there were some things that you want to keep an eye on. But overall, especially in pass coverage, I mean they were outstanding. So, Contown, let's start with you. Like, what do you think of like what happened?
Yeah, I mean, I think the story from Michigan's offense and honestly the biggest takeaway of the game for the second week in a row has to be JJ. You mentioned it. Um, Even against what we think are some of the worst teams in FBS football, he's doing things that and putting up efficiency and accuracy and kind of decision-making numbers
Yeah,
that a lot of great quarterbacks don't do in practice. So he's he's looked great. It's hard to imagine a better start for JJ McCarthy. And the competition's going to go up. So again, it's like, we talked about this after Hawaii and quickly. We talked about it after Hawaii, like what can you take from this? We're going to find out, but we certainly can say that he's making mature decisions with the football. He's not pushing the ball downfield when nothing's there. He's going through his progressions. It's been a bit of a breath of fresh air, and that's not I don't mean that as a slight to anyone specifically, but I don't know how many has it been since Jake Rudock or maybe Wilton Spate that we've been able to watch a quarterback like in real time go through his progressions on the field and like understand his progressions. It's
I guess you could say Rudock. I mean Wilton too, to a certain extent, but it's just all the other aspects to the game that JJ brings. I don't think I've seen anything like it's Chad Henne. I don't even think Chad could do some of the stuff that JJ's doing.
He certainly can't move like JJ.
No, absolutely not. That one throw he had to Schoonmaker, where he rolled out to the right and avoided the defender. I mean that nobody can do that. Denard can move like that, but he can't throw like that. Devin, right. He was, he could move, but he wasn't the fastest guy, so that probably would have been a sack for Gardner. Cade, that would have just been a sack for Cade, and pretty much any other quarterback that Michigan's had. Just some of the stuff there was just amazing.
So it's like you can tell that he's thinking the game well, and that things have slowed down for him. And he's still a very high level athlete and has an amazing arm. So he's on track to be one of the best Michigan quarterbacks in the last
ever.
30 years here. But his ceiling is ever. His ceiling is
I hate to say, his ceiling is ever, but like his floor is just of the past 30 years. He can definitely be the best. Like him and Chad Henne could be on that level, similar to each other. We talked about the run game a little bit before, and look, I mean, Corum had almost 6 yards per carry. He had 5 touchdowns, which is outstanding. But did you expect Michigan to be able to run the ball better or more? I know Edwards was out, so Stokes was really the running back 2 in this game. He didn't really play that well, but were you expecting like a big rushing output for Michigan, or what was your expectations?
Yeah, I think there's just been a lot of moving pieces in the run game for Michigan thus far. The line, the identity of the line seems like it's changed a little bit since last year. I mean, I think every single starter, save for maybe Olu, because we didn't know, last year to this year, but I think every single starter lost weight. Like Stuber was replaced by someone who is lighter than Stuber.
Much lighter, yeah.
So I don't think we're seeing the same like paving, inside zone, split zone counter team that we saw last year, where obviously we're still running all of those concepts, but it's a lighter, more agile offensive line. And it's an offensive line that has been moving people in and out. Keegan has been in and out of the last 2 games with Giovanni El-Hadi coming in. Barnhart's. Yeah, and El-Hadi looks the part. I think it'll end up being fine. The other thing is, as I think a lot of smart people have pointed out, field position has usually been like Michigan is often starting on their own 40 or better in field position these last few games. So
that's a credit to the special teams too.
Yeah. I mean, you'll take worse box score numbers in the run game if you're getting that field position every time. Like you're just going to win a lot of football games. And then the incorporation we've seen of a lot of run control plays or pre-snap RPOs, like they're just putting Roman and Ronnie Bell to one side of the field, and if the defense isn't respecting it or aligning with even numbers, they're just going to throw that bubble and let Roman pick up 12 yards at least. So
At least, yeah. He's
so
so
yeah,
quick, man.
he's great. Like, yeah, they're playing it smartly, I think. I mean, obviously the numbers bear that out in terms of team totals. But I do think the running game has left a little to be desired, and I don't know that it's necessarily a cause for concern yet, but I would certainly, I think everyone would have to agree that it's just objectively, it's a little worse than at this time last year.
Yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on.
Something to keep an eye on. Let's see when we get the full complement of O-line starters. And obviously, I didn't even mention Donovan Edwards missed this last game. So you're part of your 1-2 punch is gone. So it'll probably be fine, especially when you factor in JJ's legs as well. But seems like a little bit of a departure from last year to this point.
Yeah. Let's switch gears over to the defensive side of the ball and talk about, I guess you could say on the box score, lack of pass rush. There were 0 sacks by Michigan players in this entire game, although there were only 16 pass attempts, so there wasn't much opportunity for sacks. But in the reps that there were a pass rush, talk about what you saw, because I know that there was a lot of complaints about, when they rushed 4, they weren't getting much push. Obviously, when they were rushing more than 4, like there was some havoc being wreaked in the backfield. But talk about that front 4 and what you didn't see against UConn.
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on it. I think the organic pass rusher, when you only bring 4, you only bring the guys who line up as front players, as D-line players, or the standing edge position. It wasn't there. I think part of UConn's game plan was to get the ball out, as you would expect against for a overmatched opponent. But Michigan did have to, when Michigan only brought 4, UConn's quarterback Turner was the last name, right?
Yes,
Zion Turner.
Turner.
The freshman from St. Francis, right? No, not St. Francis. St. Thomas Aquinas. Anyways, sorry. He had time. He had time, and I think he's a decent player, especially for the type of kid that UConn normally gets. But and he's mobile, so he was able to buy time as well. But when we brought 4, we weren't getting home. We weren't even collapsing the pocket as much as we saw the first few weeks. So, it's interesting. I think even in the first 2 games, even Hawaii, where there was a similar lack of box score stats as it relates to the pass rush. I saw more organic pass rush. I saw more, one-on-one wins from our front players. They were just getting the ball out quicker. I think that was part of UConn's game plan as well. I just think Michigan was, for whatever reason, less effective this week. And I think that's interesting. It's, not the same players and not the same skill set, but I think just in general, the front had a bad game against UConn. Certainly a subpar game. Like the interior defenders in the run game. Saw Nazi Smith get pushed a couple times. Mason Graham too. So I think just generally up front, it was interesting to see that Michigan's defensive line not have the same type of game that we saw against the first 2 opponents against a UConn team that we think is similarly bad. So it's interesting. I think when we brought pressure, it was still, we were still able to move the pocket and get Turner off his platform. And I think, the one guy that probably stood out as still playing well in a one-on-one or in an organic pass rush sense was probably Derek Moore. I still thought looked pretty good out there. So
absolutely. And I would say Chris Jenkins is really good on Saturday
Yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah.
So
Of the interior guys, I think Christian could
he
easily
was
have
the
the best
best.
game. Yeah.
Do you do you think that's a product of them being double teamed? I mean, I do want to keep in mind that UConn's right guard is going to be an NFL player. He's going to play on Sundays. Colt Lunt, so he is a really good player. So is this a product of were there double teams, or was it just straight up that guys like Mozzie and Mason Graham were just getting beat one on one?
So for Mozzie specifically, he got doubled quite a bit, and I think the issue is those double teams moved him. I mean,
Yeah,
we've seen we've seen Mozzie eat double teams for over a year now. So I guess that is the answer is both. The answer is yes. I
yeah,
think I think for some reason, you see Mason Graham get double teamed and get moved. You're like, okay, this is a
yeah.
true freshman. Even against UConn, you would prefer to see that not happen. And we saw
Right.
him beat double teams in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah,
So that's more understandable. But it was interesting to see Mozzie get moved a few times. He had his wins too. I just think overall, this will probably be one of the worst games of the season for him,
yeah.
given what we think he
You would
is.
hope so, right?
You'd certainly hope so. I mean, we saw Mozzie Smith win the majority of reps against Tyler Linderbaum, the first round pick and
Right.
Remington Award
Yeah.
winner last year in the Big Ten championship game.
Games like this
So
happen.
yeah,
Like it doesn't matter who you play. Like sometimes you're just gonna struggle. So I mean, I know I'm not sitting here comparing UConn to Texas, but Texas's own line isn't really known to be that much of a strong suit for Texas. And you got a guy in Will Anderson who's probably the best defensive player in the nation outside of Jalen Carter,
yeah.
and he wasn't really effective against Texas for the most part. Um, so you can't just expect a guy that's got huge expectations coming into the season to just have a great game every single game.
Oh, yep. And obviously, every team out there is staffed with professional coaches whose job it is to game plan for your best players. So
Yeah, Jim
um,
Moore has been around for a really long time. So
yeah, yeah, and his
so
the name is escaping me right now, but the defensive coordinator is like a NFL guy as well, so they get
I'm gonna
it. They
look
know
that
who
up.
they have to. It's
I'm looking that up because I Lou Spanos.
Spanos,
Yeah, but he's
Lou
out.
Spanos. Yeah.
Remember?
Oh shoot,
So
totally forgot about that.
so
Yeah.
basically, Jim Moore is the defensive play caller with
Yeah.
all of his other defensive assistants, helping call plays and game plan. But Mora is, the he's essentially the defensive coordinator. But no, you're right about Spanos. He's a guy that's been around as well. I don't know what's going on. I don't think anybody really knows except for obviously the coaching staff and whoever else in the program. But
Yeah.
I'm sure he had a hand in helping game plan against every team that they faced so far.
Yeah. I
Michigan,
totally
of
forgot
course.
about that. Hopefully not a Bob Shoop situation.
Hopefully not. You don't want anybody to be in that kind of situation. Um, uh, anyway, uh, any last thoughts on the game against UConn before we move on to Maryland?
I would just say that I think the guys that stood out to me on defense were Junior Colson, other than names you've already mentioned, were Junior
Yeah,
Colson, Jamon Green, and Makari Page.
Jamon was excellent. Yep.
Yeah. So, and I think those guys they'd be in the top five, especially Junior and Jamon, of like, this whole preseason, this whole non-con schedule, top five performers.
Yeah.
Always around the football. Makari Page looks really confident. He's around the ball all the time.
It's a different feel with him right now.
Yeah. Yeah. He kind of weird, like, came in, played early as a freshman, didn't do well, ghost last year, and then all the way back to like one of your better players on defense.
Yeah,
Kind of
last year
like
was
a
weird. He really just disappeared.
yeah. His career has like been like the Nike logo. But he's back up. Like it's great. Um, but Jamon Green teams keep testing him, and he looks great, which is really
Yeah.
really good news for Michigan. And
Yeah, he's passing every test with flying colors. So
yeah, and I'm got a team with a lot of wide receivers coming this week. So
yeah, no,
uh,
and you know what? That's a great segue heading into the Maryland game. As you just mentioned, that they've got a ton of receivers. They've probably got what, four really good receivers: Raheem Jarrett, Jacob Copeland, the transfer from Florida,
yep,
Deshaun Jones, and then who's the other guy?
Dante
Demas,
Demas.
right? Dante
Yeah,
Demas. I get him mixed up with that that former 5-star recruit that went to A&M.
that that is his brother, right?
No, I think it's spelled differently.
Are you
Like
serious?
so, Demas is Demus and Demas is Demas. But you could see where I get the confusion from because it sounds so similar. But because I used to think they were related. Because I was like, what's the odds that those two guys would have something, of the same name? But we're just one letter off. But
All
no,
right.
anyways, they've got those four guys. Talk about, because Michigan, let's just say it, Michigan owns Maryland. And last year was what a 58-18 just beat down of Maryland, and years
Yeah.
past it's just been absolute blowouts. So talk about, these receivers that Maryland has, and Tagovailoa is back for another year at Maryland under Mike Locksley's system. You know, what are your expectations from Michigan, and like how are guys like Mikey Sanders still and Jamon Green going to perform against Maryland?
Yeah, so I think the most interesting thing about Maryland is, they bring back everyone from last year's receiver room, which was already very talented, like you
Right.
said, and they add Jacob Copeland. But the guys they brought back are not playing to the same level that they were playing at last year. And um, uh, Dante Demas was hurt last year. I can't remember if it was an ACL, but he was out for the year.
He was
Got
out.
hurt.
It was an ACL.
Yeah, hurt it during the Iowa game.
Yep.
And he has actually been of like the main. So they'll rotate four receivers: Jarrett, Demas, Deshaun Jones, and Jacob Copeland, and then the tight end, uh, Dupree. I'm sure I'm screwing that name up.
It's CJ Dupree. Yeah.
Dupree. Okay. Um, but Demas has been like pretty mediocre, and easily
Dropped
the
a lot
worst.
of passes.
Yeah, easily the worst of those four. So I don't know if that's just knocking off rust or just it hasn't come back the same from the injury.
Yeah.
Jacob Copeland, I know PFF likes Jacob Copeland the best of the bunch right now. He's also played.
Interesting.
He's also clearly like the fourth in terms of snap count. He's not a
Rotation.
starter. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and
I
then they like,
thought I thought Jarrett's looked the best, just from what I've seen, and it's no surprise. I mean, he was a beast in high school. So
yeah, and he was really effective even when Demas went out for them last year too. So former
right,
five
yeah.
star.
Mm-hmm.
He's more of
Former
a slot
LSU
guy.
commit.
Former LSU commit, flipped to stay
Yeah,
home.
for some
So,
reason.
but they're all still dangerous. Like these are talented,
Absolutely.
really talented receivers. And
Yeah.
I think most years when Michigan has dominated Maryland, especially last year, it's just been a mixture of Michigan's defensive front overpowering Maryland's offensive line and Maryland's own mistakes.
Yes.
And I think Maryland's offensive line has improved this year. I think they've got like a glaring danger spot at center in
Yes.
the Branch kid.
Yeah.
But other than that, the rest of the offensive line looks pretty good so far, at least in the passing game. I
Yeah.
certainly in the run game, I don't expect Michigan to lose that battle up front, but
Yeah.
It's
Jalen
they're
Duncan's
doing a
their
better.
best guy at left tackle.
Yeah, Jalen Duncan and I think the other tackle Glaze is pretty good too.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
so they're doing a better job of keeping Talia upright. I know he's had injury concerns, and he's also a guy that he can make plays with
Panics.
his feet, but if he decides to throw the ball after he's moved off his spot, he panics, and he will throw the ball to the other team. So
Yeah.
this is going to be a very interesting matchup in terms of I certainly expect Michigan to go heavy zone against this really high flying passing attack and talented
Yeah.
receivers. And so it'll be an interesting game to see, Coach Minter's zone pressures and where he brings pressure from. Um, as we were just talking about the kind of question marks surrounding Michigan's organic pass rush.
Yeah, I would love to not see any cover zero in this game,
Yeah,
unless they're
no,
just
that
up by like 20 or 30. And the
this
game's
is a
just
team that will
average.
make you pay if you screw up in cover zero.
Cover zero. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, no, this is not the game to be taking those kind of risks. Just do that all game against Iowa or something. I don't know.
Coverage
Let's
-1 against Iowa.
just play 90 linemen. Um, just run a 9-3.
Yeah.
3 linebackers, 9 defensive linemen. Or two linebackers. Excuse me, penalty. Um, talk about Michigan's pass rush. Then, like, are they going to be able to get home against Talia? And we talked about those concerns against UConn when they were rushing forward. So are they going to have to bring an extra guy each time, or are they going to try and rush forward and see if that works at the beginning of the game?
I think you'll see a lot of zone pressures, a lot of fire zone, a lot of guys who line up as an edge guy or a deep tackle dropping into a zone, and a guy from the second level being brought to blitz. Sainer still has shown really effective as a blitzer. We know Junior Colson is a really good blitzer. So, and we've seen Mike Morris drop into coverage. We've seen Jalen Harrell play in a zone coverage. So I think you'll continue to see different exotics and different zone pressures where you might not be bringing more than 4 or 5 on a given play, but
Yeah.
it's not the 4 guys that the offense thinks is coming. It's not the 5 guys. So, um, Talia, I think, is an effective quarterback if he's able to throw from a clean pocket. But if the coverage rolls and guys are coming from different levels of the defense and dropping from the front into zones that he wasn't expecting, like you mentioned, he's a guy that panics. And I think this is a really good game for defensive coordinator from the Ravens tree that knows how to bring exotics and confuse quarterbacks by not making them uncertain of which defender is going to be where once the play starts. And we saw that last year with McDonald, right? This is why you bring in Jesse Minter. He was able to thoroughly confuse most of the quarterbacks on the roster last year, but certainly Tua, Talia. Tua, unfortunately, I left on my fantasy bench this weekend.
Oh no, that's his
um,
big game. Well, hopefully the results are different. Talia against the Ravens, like the
yeah. So, oh yeah, that's some bad juju because Tua
yeah.
tore up
Come on
Mike
now.
McDonald.
Yeah,
um,
tore him up all in the second half, or really the fourth quarter. So
yeah. So,
yeah,
hopefully we show why this is a little brother and why only one of the brothers is playing on Sundays right now. But
yeah,
no, I think it's a perfect game for kind of the Ravens blitz schemes that we've seen over the last year and a half here. Confuse Talia. You don't have to bring 6 to get home, but I certainly think you're not going to know which 4 are coming on a given play, and a lot of zone on the back end.
yep. Um, any last thoughts on defense before we switch over to the offensive side of the ball for Michigan?
I would just say we kind of touched on this in the UConn wrap up, but the emergence of Jamon Green, and Makari Page
Yeah,
gives like you've got six guys on the back end that you trust, and that's really great for Michigan. You can run three safety sets. You can run like dime like 3-2-6 stuff, and against these pass heavy teams, and feel really confident that you're going to be fine on the back end. And it helps the pressure, right? We talk about the lack of organic pressure. Well, coverage sacks are a thing. If no one's open, even the worst pass rushers will get home after 6 seconds. So yeah,
right.
it all works hand in hand. So it's good news for Michigan.
Absolutely. Let's switch over to the offensive side of the ball, and we're talking about a Maryland defense that, they're 45th in the nation in terms of opponent points per game, but they haven't really played anybody. And when they did play somebody with a really nice offense, SMU this past Saturday, they should have lost, but SMU's play calling was just maddening. Maryland's such an undisciplined team. I think they had 15 penalties in this past weekend. I know you were saying, off air, Contown, about how Maryland is top 5 in terms of penalties that they've drawn this year, which is just they were pretty much the same team last year in terms of just undisciplined play. So
Yeah.
Just especially the whole defense itself just is not impressive to me. So what are you expecting from Michigan's offense? Are you expecting more run heavy, pass heavy, or are we going to be balanced? What's gonna happen here Saturday?
Barrett, you touched on Maryland's an interesting team. They're just like the offense. They're a team that they have talent at the skill positions, but up front, I don't think Maryland can hang with Michigan in the trenches and in the box. Excuse me. And there's there's some weaknesses on the back end too. I mean, Michigan's got probably you would say Michigan has the second best receiving room in the Big Ten, between Ohio State and Maryland. So I think you're going to see another balanced attack. I think it could turn into late in the game as Michigan starts to pull away. Classic Maryland game where Michigan is running the ball a lot late, but early, I would expect Michigan to keep Maryland on their heels a little bit and be fairly balanced. I think you're going to see a lot of the same stuff we've seen so far, where JJ's got a run control, pre-snap check to throw a route if Maryland is not respecting the receivers or misaligned. And I think certainly you're going to see Michigan test Maryland in the trenches. You mentioned they haven't played anyone, and SMU, who is not known for being able to bully teams up front, had a decent amount of success on the ground for an air raid team. So that's not a great sign for Maryland.
I think they outgained Maryland by like 100 yards on offense.
Oh yeah, they did. They continued to shoot themselves in the foot, but like this is a game where if you're just box score surfing, like SMU should have won this football game.
Absolutely.
To only the yards they put up to only come away with 27 points it's hard to do.
Play calling, awful play calling in the red zone.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the red zone play. Don't get me
very
started. They outgained Maryland by 80 yards. On a per play basis, Maryland was better from a yards per play standpoint. But SMU also won the time of possession and had way fewer penalties. So really no reason for them to lose the game. So Maryland, I also don't think Maryland has great pass rush. So they're another team that, even more so than Michigan, will probably need to bring numbers to get pressure on JJ. And I think we've seen Trenty Jones and different players on the line, but certainly I think we've seen the right tackle position be subject to getting beat a couple times. As far as like the conference opponents go, I think Maryland will be on the lower end of teams that are able to really test that for Michigan. So I think you'll see a pretty balanced attack this weekend. You'll have opportunities to hit big play action shots. I think given what we think Michigan can do in the ground game, and the lack of pass rush. So pretty optimistic about what Michigan could do to this Maryland defense.
Yeah, I mean, I am too. If they struggle against this Maryland defense, then that's when I'll start getting a little worried. But I think they'll be fine on that end. Any room for concern, like real quick, just about Maryland's run game, because they've honestly looked really good so far.
Yeah, I think the big thing with Maryland this year has been the more balanced version of this Maryland offense. The emergence of Hemby at running back has been huge for them. They still have a running back rotation, but Hemby has certainly looked the best so far. And then just the offensive line, like we said, the center is the weak spot, but the other four players are pretty decent, and the one tackle really stands out. And so far, they've looked like a complete offense. They're not an air raid team. They're not a team that has struggled to run the ball today. Now, again, opponent caveats apply. Like Charlotte looks like they're in contention for one of the worst teams in FBS. And then Buffalo.
They did beat Georgia State though, somehow.
Yeah, I don't know. Poor Georgia State. They're the best 0-3 team that's ever existed.
They are, in my heart at least.
But so what does that look like against a front of Michigan's that we think is going to be one of the better ones in the conference? It's hard to say, but they certainly look more balanced than other Mike Locksley teams we've seen to this point. So, I don't know about concern, but I think it's going to be a real test for this defense. And it'll certainly be a bigger test than any of the next two offenses Michigan's going to see. So probably a good ramp up for Penn State in 4 weeks. But I certainly think it's a battle that Michigan should win.
Yeah, I completely agree. Any last thoughts on Michigan's offense against Maryland's defense before we head into our predictions and all these prize picks over unders?
Not necessarily. I think we saw, maybe the only thing I would say is I think we saw some new personnel getting into the game against UConn this last weekend. So, it looks like Max Bredeson's going to have a role going forward. Mm-hmm. We all mentioned it off air, but man, Alex Orji looks great running the ball. So I think I think that package is
much better than the Dan Villari package.
Yeah, it's kind of every year we hear like, who's going to be the new like Taysom Hill comp, like the honorable Taysom Hill, like 4th string quarterback for Michigan. But this year it looks like that might be there might be some validity to that talk.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think the most impressive thing about Alex is not the fact that he just is so powerful, but he knows the running lanes really well.
Yeah, he's not. He doesn't feel like a quarterback running football.
Straight into like a pile almost.
Right. When he has a called run play, he can flip the switch into running back mode pretty well.
He knows what he's doing. Exactly. Yeah.
RG3 exactly loves him.
Right. Yeah, he does. He mentioned there was an orgy in the end zone against Who was it? Who
Uh,
was it? The first game
Colorado
of the year?
State.
Was it
Yeah,
Colorado
yeah.
State? Got it. Yeah, can't believe that's already been 2 weeks ago. But yeah, no, I love Origin and the football player that is. I think he's been outstanding so far, running the ball. I, just I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but he looks like. I mean, obviously, we've mentioned off air that he would look like a great running back. But man, I wonder what it would be like if he was a tight end, not a tight end, excuse me, a linebacker. You know what? Because his
Yeah,
brother's a linebacker,
his
so it
brother
might be in the genes.
brother's a linebacker. I don't think you're the only person to bring up. That linebacker could be in his future.
Yeah, like
He,
he might be solid there.
he's so well built. He looks, you said it. He looks like a linebacker. He he's a guy that is
Yeah,
in like his frame. You could do a lot with his frame and athleticism, right? He's a
yeah,
quarterback. Play him at running back. You could even play him at like an H back role. He's about the same size as like Max
yeah,
Bredesen. And you could play him at linebacker too. He's about the same size as Junior Colson. So
yeah.
um,
I'm not
he's
gonna lie though. If he ever learned how to just consistently throw a football, just don't even worry about it, man. Just stick him at quarterback and see what happens.
Tim Tebow, but better.
But better. Yeah, but better. All right. Before we head out, I wanna head over to Prize Picks and you know give up our predictions for our over and unders, and I'm gonna start with JJ McCarthy. Last week, it was his second start, and he kind of started out low with his over unders, but this week it's gone up a little bit more. So Contown over or under 255.5 passing yards for JJ McCarthy.
I took the over last week. I don't think it hit. You can correct me on that if I'm wrong.
It did
I think
not
I'm
hit. He missed it by 6 yards.
six. Yeah, I was gonna say I thought it was less than 10 yards. I'm I'm gonna take the over again. I'm gonna double down on the over here. I just think he's gonna play probably the whole game unless it gets really bad. And I think Michigan is just gonna, it's conference play, and it's not certainly not the worst team in the conference. So Michigan's gonna be a little more aggressive, open up a little bit more of the playbook, and I just think it'll be. I don't know that he'll need to hit the over to win, but I think the offense generally will be a little bit more. It's Big Ten play time, right? You're not
Right.
taking the
Gonna
starters out. You're
open it
not
up a
hold.
little bit more.
Yeah, so a little bit up the throttle a little bit on the offense. I'll take the over.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to take the over as well. I think they're going to open up the offense a little bit more. I think they're going to, just try and air it out a little bit more on Maryland's defense. I think you can get them on the big plays, and
Yeah.
SMU showed that, um, in the game this past Saturday against Maryland. So I'm going to take the over on that. Um, let's go with Blake Corum, over or under 91.5 rush yards. It's a high number.
It's a high number. I think I'm gonna go over for the same reason. I know the over burned me last week on Quorum.
Yeah.
Wish you gave me an over under on touchdowns last week instead of yards. but
I would have taken that.
Oh yeah. But I same reason. I just think it's going to be the starters. The starters are going to play the whole game until maybe late in the fourth, and I think Corum might be one that has to hit the over. I don't know about has to hit the over, but I think it's one where, if you tell me like if Michigan covers in this game, like if you told me Michigan's going to cover the whatever it is 16.5-point spread, I would tell you that Corum hit the over.
Yes.
I think he's going to play. He's going to get more carries, and I'll say he hits at least one run of 30 plus. So I'll take the over.
Yeah. I'm gonna take the over as well. I think in order for Michigan to win the way that I think they will win, they're gonna need the offense to hit on all cylinders, and I think they will. I think Blake Corum's gonna have to run for over 100 yards. Either him or even like Donovan Edwards can run over 100 yards. So I'll take the over on 91.5 yards for Blake Corum. Head over to JJ McCarthy, 20.5 rush yards over or under.
Over.
Yeah.
20.5.
Yeah. I
Over.
might
Yeah.
hammer that over.
Yeah. That could be one run.
Right. Yeah, because he can break out for a run very easily.
So I guess like the trap there is sack yardage. But
Yeah.
I'll still take the over. He's pretty good at evading pressure, getting out on the edge, and you either find someone or you throw it away. I know he had the one sack against UConn where he took like a 2-yard sack for no reason. He could have just thrown it away. He was like standing
Yeah,
on the sideline.
I'm sure film study was really fun for him during
Yeah.
that time.
But no, I'll take the over. Like I said, that could be one run, and he'll probably get like 2 or 3 like true run plays this weekend. So over.
Yeah, I'm gonna go over as well. I mean, like you said, it could literally be one play for JJ and he'll be fine. And hit that over easily. So, and like I said about Blake Corum, I think they're just gonna have to open up the offense a little bit more. And I think, one of those ways is gonna be fully utilizing JJ. Like, I'm not saying throw him into the fire, but I think, Jim's gonna open things up a lot more and just be like, hey, we need to see what you're made of, and it's the first a real test for you as a starter for Michigan. So, I think that'll be a big part of his game. So I'm going to go over on 20.5 rush yards for JJ. Last over under, Ronnie Bell, 82.5 receiving yards, over or under.
Can't go over on all of these. I'm gonna go under. I'm gonna go under, even though this is like one that I do think JJ really likes Ronnie, trusts Ronnie, and the deep routes. Ronnie tends to not run the deep routes if they're running a dagger concept. It seems like Ronnie's gonna have the dig if they're running a post with a deep over. Ronnie's got the deep over, right? And it's either CJ or Roman that's gonna have the deep route, it seems. So and JJ has been good about checking down and finding Ronnie, trust Ronnie clearly. So it's hard, but I think I'm going to go under here. I think they're going to spread the ball around a little bit more. Probably a big day for Roman and at least 2 catches for CJ. So I'll go under. But I don't feel great about that one, but I got to go under on one of these.
Yeah, I'm going to go under as well. It's no offense to Ronnie, but someone has to go under, right? So yeah. I think it'll be him. It'll be interesting how they spread the ball around. I think Roman's going to have a really big game in comparison to Bell. So I'm gonna go under for Bell. Let's final segment of every podcast. Let's go over our predictions for the game. Contown, what do you think is going to be the final score?
I think the final score will end up looking fairly similar to previous Michigan Maryland games. This is just a team that Jim Harbaugh does not lose to, and they're in a kind of a statistical profile of a team. Even if you take the logo and the name away, that Jim Harbaugh doesn't lose to at home. Certainly at home, yeah. Really rarely ever anywhere. But so in terms of Michigan winning, I feel totally fine. In terms of the spread, 16.5 is a big number. But I don't know. I just think Michigan's team and strength in the trenches is going to be too much for Maryland. I think it might feel a little more competitive than previous Michigan Maryland games.
I think it will be at first.
Yeah, for longer than normal, but I think Michigan's going to end up pulling away. Despite all of that I just said, I think Michigan's going to cover. So I'm going to take Michigan 42-21. That feels like the most Michigan Maryland score ever. Like it's like the least fun covering of a football game, and like just got to get through Maryland. Every year it just feels like, oh, all right, we got to get through the Maryland game. So hopefully the team's not going through the motions, but I think Michigan covers 42-21.
Yeah, I got it a little bit higher than that, 52-24. I think Maryland might even score first against Michigan. Michigan fans are going to start freaking out, like, oh, is Don Brown back? Blah blah blah. Because they did the same thing last year when Western Michigan was putting up a little bit of a fight in the first half against Michigan, but they ended up pulling away. Yeah, I think the offense is going to be hitting on all cylinders, and I think that uh, the defense will struggle at first, but I think they'll settle in, and Minter's going to make the in-game adjustments that he needs to. So, yeah, I'm going to go 52-24, just like the typical Michigan drubbing of Maryland. Just the annual beatdown that they have every single year, and just head on to Iowa, who's an offensive juggernaut right now. They did put up a lot of points against Nevada, so you got to watch out for them.
Yeah,
But,
they put up a crazy 27.
yeah,
But in their
after like
defense, it
3
was like
lightning
3
delays.
a.m. Yeah. It was
Yeah.
like 3 a.m. Eastern time, and so everyone was a little sleepy.
Could you imagine if that happens against Michigan next week? Just like delay after delay, and they end up playing a night game anyway. That would be so maddening.
I hadn't even thought about that possibility.
Yeah.
There's some
that
Iowa fan. There's some farmer in Des Moines right now looking up like how to make lightning.
Just putting up like metal everywhere, as fast as possible before next weekend.
Yeah. Matt also said 21 points. I don't think he gave us a score, but he told us 21 points. So
yeah, you guys have been similar in terms of points this year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I know. It was me and you last year, and
me and you last year. Yeah, it'll be me and Matt next year.
Yeah, switch our alliances here.
Yeah. Well, that does it for this episode of the Hail to Michigan podcast. I am your host, Ronnie Harder, and I was joined tonight by Contown. You can catch this podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast from. Rate us, review us, download, do whatever you want. But in the meantime, you can catch us next week as we preview Iowa and hopefully go over a Michigan win against Maryland. But as always, go blue.